Marcus Webb died smiling in the darkness. 9 years later, a cheesemaker would find him 20 feet below Wisconsin's dairy heartland, and that smile would haunt everyone who saw it. 12 hours before the discovery, Vincent Gallo had been aging cheese in the limestone caves beneath Heritage Cheese Company for 31 years. Every morning at 4 a.m., he descended into the network of tunnels that stretched 5 miles beneath Riverside County, Wisconsin. The caves maintained a perfect 58 degrees year-round, ideal for the wheels of cheddar that would mature in darkness for months or even years. Before we start the story, write what city you are from. We are very interested in where you are watching our video from. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your rating. On September 23, 2024, Vincent noticed something wrong the moment he entered Cave Section 7. The wooden shelving unit that held wheels from 2015 had collapsed. Not unusual in itself, wood degraded in the constant humidity, but as Vincent knelt to assess the damage, his headlamp caught something that shouldn't exist. Behind the fallen shelves, partially buried in limestone dust, a human skull grinned at him with perfect teeth. The Riverside County Sheriff's Department arrived within 20 minutes. Detective Sarah Chen, a 15-year veteran who'd transferred from Milwaukee 2 years prior, took charge of the scene. The body was skeletal, preserved by the cave's unique environment, but clearly there for years. The clothing remained partially intact, a security guard's uniform with a badge still pinned to the chest. Lakeside Security Services. The name on the badge was readable, despite the years. M. Webb. Marcus Webb, Sheriff Deputy Ron Martinez read from his tablet 2 hours later. Reported missing September 14, 2015. He was 28, worked night security for Lakeside. They had the contract for this whole industrial district, including Heritage Cheese. Chen studied the scene. The body was positioned oddly, sitting against the cave wall as if Marcus had simply decided to rest and never got up. But people didn't accidentally wander 20 feet underground into a restricted cheese aging facility. And they certainly didn't smile about it. Derek Hoffman hadn't aged well. 9 years had added 30 pounds and subtracted most of his hair, but he remembered Marcus Webb immediately when Chen and Martinez arrived at Lakeside Security's office. "Marcus was one of my best until he wasn't," Derek said, pulling out a cigarette before remembering he couldn't smoke inside anymore. His fingers drummed against the pack. "Smart kid, too smart maybe. Always thought there was some conspiracy going on. Every missing clipboard was corporate espionage, every broken window was coordinated crime." "You reported him missing," Chen noted, checking her files. "Had to. He didn't show for his shift, didn't answer his phone. That wasn't like Marcus. Say what you want about his theories, but he never missed work. I drove his route myself that night, checked all his usual spots. His patrol car was at Heritage Cheese, but he was gone." Derek led them to the employee files, dusty boxes in a storage room that smelled of mildew. Marcus's locker had been cleaned out and his belongings boxed up, never claimed. Inside were maps of Milwaukee's underground, articles about urban exploration, and a notebook filled with observations from his security rounds. "See what I mean?" Derek tapped the notebook. "Kid was obsessed with the underground. Thought there were tunnels connecting all the old breweries, smuggling routes from Prohibition. He asked me once if our insurance would cover him if he got hurt exploring on company time. I told him to stick to his assigned route." Chen found an entry dated September 10, 2015, 4 days before Marcus vanished. "DH meeting someone after hours at Heritage, 3rd time this week. Personal vehicle, not company car. Check building permits for basement access." "DH would be you?" Chen asked. Derek's drumming fingers stopped. "I had meetings with Heritage Management about expanding our contract. They wanted coverage for their cave system after they had some vandalism. Nothing sinister about it." "At 2 a.m.? When else could I meet with the night operations manager?" "Look, Detective, I know how this looks, but Marcus was paranoid. He saw shadows everywhere. Derek finally gave up and lit his cigarette despite being indoors. "I'll be honest with you, the kid was investigating me. He thought I was selling security schedules to thieves or something. He followed me a couple of times, took photos of my meetings. I had to write him up for abandoning his post." Martinez pulled up Derek's personnel file on his tablet. 2 complaints filed by Marcus Webb about suspicious activity. 1 response from Derek claiming insubordination. The tension was documented and official. "What happened the night he disappeared?" Chen asked. "Normal shift until it wasn't. Marcus was covering the warehouse district, 7 to 7. I was home, my ex-wife can verify that. We were still together then. I got a call from Heritage Cheese at 5:30 a.m. saying our patrol car was in their lot, but no guard. I drove over, found the car unlocked, Marcus's clipboard on the seat. His last notation was at 2:47 a.m., checking Heritage's perimeter." But Detective Chen noticed something Derek didn't mention. According to the old security logs Martinez had pulled up, Derek's access card was used at Heritage Cheese at 3:15 a.m., the night Marcus disappeared. When she brought this up, Derek's cigarette trembled slightly. "Must be a mistake. The system was glitchy back then. We had problems with cards registering when they weren't even used." Jennifer Paulson arrived at the sheriff's station in a Tesla, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Chen made in a month. She was 38 now, but looked younger, with the kind of careful maintenance that money provided. She'd been the environmental compliance officer who inspected both Lakeside Security and Heritage Cheese back in 2015. "I remember Marcus Webb," she said, crossing her legs and checking her phone simultaneously. "He accused me of taking bribes, filed a formal complaint with the state, cost me a promotion and nearly my career." "What made him think you were taking bribes?" Chen asked. Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Because I didn't find any violations at Heritage Cheese, and Marcus was convinced they were dumping chemicals. He had this whole theory about illegal fungicides being used in the caves. He cornered me during an inspection, very aggressive, very inappropriate. I had to file a harassment complaint." She pulled up old emails on her phone, showing them to Chen. Marcus had sent 17 emails to various regulatory agencies claiming Jennifer was corrupt. He'd taken photos of her car at Heritage Cheese at unusual hours, documented her inspection schedule, even followed her to a restaurant where she'd had lunch with Heritage's management. "The man was unhinged," Jennifer continued. "I was doing my job. Yes, I met with Heritage management. Yes, I inspected their facilities multiple times. That's literally what they paid me to do. But Marcus thought every meeting was a payoff. Every inspection was a cover-up." "Where were you the night he disappeared?" Martinez asked. "Madison. Environmental Compliance Conference at the Concourse Hotel. 300 witnesses. I gave a presentation on sustainable agriculture practices at 9 a.m. the next morning. You can Google it. There's probably still video online." But Jennifer's alibi had a hole. The conference records showed she'd checked in at 8 a.m. for her presentation. The drive from Riverside to Madison was 3 hours. She could have been in Riverside until 5 a.m. and still made her presentation. "I drove up the night before," Jennifer insisted, when pressed. "Stayed at the hotel. They must have records." But she seemed nervous now, her phone checking becoming more frequent, her crossed legs bouncing slightly. Chen made a note to verify the hotel records. Tom Kowalski was different from the others. The maintenance chief at Heritage Cheese arrived in work clothes, limestone dust still on his boots. He was 45, quiet, methodical in his answers. He'd been the one who'd found Marcus's security badge years ago. "Found it in Cave 4 during routine maintenance, maybe 2 weeks after he disappeared," Tom explained. "Turned it into management right away. Figured he'd dropped it during a patrol." "Did you know Marcus?" Chen asked. "Not personally. Saw him around sometimes when I worked late. He'd wave, I'd wave back. That was about it." Tom had something the others didn't have, though: complete knowledge of the cave system. He pulled out a tablet, showing Chen detailed maps of every tunnel, every chamber, every entrance and exit. These caves are from the 1940s, carved out for mushroom farming originally, then converted for cheese aging in the 60s. 5 miles of tunnels total, but only about 2 miles are actively used. The rest are sealed off or partially collapsed. Could someone access those sealed areas? Chen asked. If they knew where to look, sure. We've had problems with urban explorers before. Kids looking for adventure. There are ventilation shafts from the old days. Most are welded shut, but some... Tom shrugged. It's a big system. Hard to secure everything. Tom offered to give them a tour, leading Chen and Martinez through the main entrance into the caves. The temperature dropped immediately, the air becoming thick with the smell of aging cheese and limestone. Their footsteps echoed off the walls as Tom's flashlight swept across endless rows of cheese wheels. Section 7, where Vincent found the body, that's been restricted for years. Structural issues. The supports were damaged in flooding back in 2012. We've been meaning to repair them, but it hasn't been a priority since we don't use that section. But something bothered Chen about Tom's helpful demeanor. He knew every inch of these caves, every entrance, every hazard. If someone wanted to hide a body where it wouldn't be found for years, they'd need exactly his kind of knowledge. As they returned to the surface, Chen's phone buzzed. The coroner's preliminary report was in. Marcus Webb had died from blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with either a fall or being struck. Time of death was estimated between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on September 14, 2015. But there was something else. The body showed signs of being moved post-mortem, and there were traces of industrial fungicide in the remaining tissue samples. Jennifer had been right about the chemicals, but wrong about who was using them. The fungicide matched a type that had been banned in 2014, a year before Marcus died. Someone at Heritage Cheese had been using illegal chemicals in their caves, and Marcus had found out. Derek's financial records from 2015 painted a concerning picture. 3 months before Marcus disappeared, Derek had deposited $50,000 in cash into his account in structured payments designed to avoid federal reporting requirements. He'd claimed it was from selling his boat, but no boat sale was ever recorded. The payment stopped the week after Marcus vanished. But it was a single detail that ended Act 1 with a shocking revelation. Security footage from a gas station 2 blocks from Heritage Cheese, grainy but readable, showed Derek's personal vehicle at 3:10 a.m. on September 14, 2015. He was pumping gas, but he wasn't alone. Someone was in the passenger seat. The figure was unclear, but one thing was certain. Derek had lied about being home with his ex-wife that night. The gas station footage changed everything. Chen had it enhanced 3 times, but the passenger in Derek's car remained a shadow. What became clear was Derek's demeanor in the video. He kept looking around nervously, checking his phone, pacing while the tank filled. This wasn't a man on a routine midnight drive. Derek's ex-wife, Patricia Hoffman, lived in a craftsman house near the lake, the kind of property that security guards couldn't usually afford. She answered the door in nursing scrubs, having just returned from a night shift at Riverside General. Derek wasn't home that night, she said simply, not even pretending to maintain his lie. He left around midnight, said he had to handle something at work. I was used to it. Derek always had something to handle. Did he say what specifically? Chen asked. Patricia poured coffee with steady hands, a woman who'd made peace with old betrayals. Marcus Webb. He said Marcus was becoming a problem, asking too many questions. Derek was worried Marcus would find out about the money. What money? The $50,000. Derek told me he won it gambling, but I knew better. Derek never wanted anything. He was selling something, information probably. Security schedules, access codes, I don't know exactly. But Marcus was getting close to figuring it out. Patricia revealed that Derek had come home around 5:45 a.m. that morning, showered immediately, and burned his clothes in their backyard fire pit. She'd found fragments of fabric that looked like they had limestone dust on them. She'd kept one piece hidden in her jewelry box all these years. "Why didn't you come forward?" Martinez asked. "With what? Suspicions?" Derek said Marcus ran off, started a new life somewhere. It happened sometimes with security guards. The job got to them. And Derek, he could be convincing when he needed to be. Plus, I had 2 kids to think about. Derek was a lot of things, but he was never violent. I couldn't imagine him actually hurting anyone. The fabric Patricia provided tested positive for limestone dust, consistent with Heritage Cheese's caves. But more importantly, it had blood on it. Type A positive. Marcus Webb's blood type. When confronted with this evidence, Derek's story evolved again. Yes, he'd gone to Heritage Cheese that night. Yes, he'd met with Marcus. But it wasn't what they thought. "Marcus had photos of me meeting with Tony Gillespie," Derek admitted, naming a known fence for stolen goods. "But I wasn't selling security info to thieves. Tony's brother worked at Heritage in management. They were the ones buying information about surprise inspections, regulatory visits. Heritage was hiding something in those caves, and they paid me to give them advance warning when anyone official was coming." "So you killed Marcus to protect your scheme?" "No. God, no. I met with Marcus to try to reason with him. Offered him a cut even. He was parked at Heritage when I got there, said he was going to check the caves himself, find whatever they were hiding. I tried to stop him, we argued. He shoved me, went inside. I waited in the parking lot for maybe 20 minutes, then left. I swear I never went into those caves." "Who was in your car at the gas station?" Derek's face crumbled. "My daughter, Rebecca. She was 16, snuck out to meet her boyfriend. I caught her walking home, picked her up on my way to meet Marcus. She stayed in the car the whole time, fell asleep. She never knew what happened. Please don't drag her into this." Rebecca Hoffman, now 25 and living in Chicago, confirmed the story over video call. She remembered that night, remembered her father picking her up, remembered falling asleep in the car while he dealt with work issues. She'd never connected it to Marcus Webb's disappearance. The investigation shifted focus to Jennifer Paulson. Her hotel records from Madison showed she'd checked in at 11 p.m. the night before her presentation, but the key card wasn't used until 7:30 a.m. The night clerk didn't remember seeing her. Her phone had connected to a tower in Riverside at 1:45 a.m., not Madison. "I drove back," Jennifer finally admitted. "But not for what you think." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to old messages. "I was having an affair with Richard Hansen, Heritage's vice president of operations. His wife was out of town. I drove back to see him after the conference dinner. Spent the night at his house, drove back to Madison early morning for my presentation. Richard will confirm it, though his wife won't be happy." Richard Hansen, now divorced and living in Florida, confirmed Jennifer's alibi via phone. He'd been with her from 2 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. at his house, nowhere near Heritage Cheese. He remembered specifically because they'd watched coverage of a meteor shower from his backyard hot tub. But Jennifer's inspection reports told another story. In August 2015, she'd noted irregularities in chemical storage at Heritage, but marked them as resolved. In September, days before Marcus disappeared, she'd signed off on a clean inspection despite never entering the caves. "Richard asked me to," she admitted. "They were using a fungicide that wasn't approved yet, but it was safe, just stuck in regulatory red tape. I marked it as compliant because it would be compliant once the paperwork went through. Marcus saw the discrepancy, thought I was covering up something sinister. He was half right." The fungicide found in Marcus's tissue samples matched what Jennifer had overlooked. But the chemical signature had degraded in a specific way that suggested exposure after death, not before. Someone had moved Marcus's body through an area where the fungicide had been used. Tom Kowalski's maintenance logs from 2015 showed he'd worked alone in the caves the night Marcus disappeared, performing emergency structural assessments from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. When Chen questioned him about this, Tom remained calm. "We had water infiltration in Section 6. I was checking to make sure it hadn't spread to other areas. It's all documented, photos, moisture readings, everything." And it was. Tom's records were meticulous, time-stamped photos showing various parts of the caves throughout the night. But Chen noticed something odd. In photos taken at 3:30 a.m. and 4:15 a.m., Tom's shirt was different. Same color, same style, but in the first photo, there was a small logo on the pocket. In the second, no logo. "I keep spare shirts in my work locker," Tom explained. "The caves are dirty. I change if I need to." But why would he need to change his shirt in the middle of the night while working alone? Chen had the photos enhanced. In the 3:30 a.m. photo, there was something else, barely visible in the corner. A reflection in a puddle of water showing a second person's shoes. Someone else had been in the caves with Tom that night. The tissue analysis revealed something unexpected. Marcus had consumed a significant amount of alcohol before his death, enough to impair judgment, but not enough to incapacitate him. His stomach contents, remarkably preserved by the cave environment, contained traces of aged cheddar and expensive whiskey, a combination that seemed oddly specific. Chen returned to the caves with ground-penetrating radar. In Section 7, near where Marcus's body was found, they discovered an anomaly. Behind a section of newer limestone blocks, there was a hollow space. Tom insisted it was probably natural. Caves were full of voids and pockets. But when they removed the blocks, they found something extraordinary. A hidden chamber, roughly 10 feet by 12 feet, set up like a speakeasy from the 1920s. Vintage bottles of whiskey lined makeshift shelves, some empty, some still sealed. A small table and 2 chairs sat in the center, covered in decades of dust, except for one spot that had been wiped clean. On the clean spot was a modern cheese board and 2 glasses, one still containing dried residue. "This has been here since Prohibition," Tom said, and for once he seemed genuinely surprised. "My grandfather told stories about hidden bars in the caves, but I thought they were just stories." The whiskey matched what was in Marcus's stomach. The cheese was Heritage's premium aged cheddar. Someone had brought Marcus here for a drink, and he'd never left. Derek's financial records revealed another layer. The $50,000 hadn't come from Tony Gillespie or Heritage Management. It had come from a numbered account traced to a shell company called Underground Holdings, LLC. The company had been dissolved in 2016, but its registration showed a familiar address, Tom Kowalski's mother's house. When questioned, Tom admitted he'd discovered the speakeasy 5 years before Marcus died. He'd been slowly selling the vintage whiskey to collectors, using the money to pay for his mother's cancer treatment. Each bottle was worth thousands, some tens of thousands. He'd sold 6 bottles through Derek, who had connections to buyers. "But I never told Marcus about it," Tom insisted. "I never even met him properly. Derek handled everything." Yet the evidence suggested otherwise. The cleaned spot on the table had Tom's fingerprints. The glasses had been washed in the same industrial sanitizer Tom used for maintenance equipment. And most damning, Marcus's notebook, found in his employee locker, had an entry from September 13th. "TK wants to meet, says he has something to show me about the Heritage situation. Cave 7, after shift. TK, Tom Kowalski." The medical examiner made a crucial discovery. The blunt force trauma to Marcus's head showed a distinctive pattern, a circular indentation with radiating fractures. She'd seen this pattern before in cases where victims were struck with bottles. Specifically, heavy, thick-bottomed bottles, like those used for aged spirits in the early 20th century. Someone had hit Marcus with one of the Prohibition-era whiskey bottles. But who? Derek claimed he'd never entered the caves. His daughter confirmed he'd returned to the car within 20 minutes, not enough time to navigate to Section 7, kill Marcus, and return. Jennifer had been with Richard Hansen. Tom had photographic documentation of his whereabouts throughout the night, even if someone had been with him. Chen decided to reconstruct the timeline using all available evidence. Marcus's last official log entry, 2:47 a.m. at Heritage Perimeter. Derek arrived at 3:10 a.m., argued with Marcus in the parking lot, left around 3:30 a.m. Tom's photos showed him in Section 6 at 3 a.m., then Section 4 at 3:30 a.m., then Section 7 at 4:15 a.m. with the changed shirt. The coroner estimated death between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. The window was narrow, but possible. If Marcus entered the caves around 3:30 a.m. after Derek left, made his way to Section 7 for his meeting with TK, he would have arrived around 3:45 a.m. Tom could have met him there, shared drinks in the speakeasy, killed him around 4 a.m., changed his shirt, and continued his documented maintenance rounds. But something didn't fit. The person in the reflection in Tom's 3:30 a.m. photo. If Tom was in Section 4 at 3:30 a.m. with someone else, he couldn't have been killing Marcus in Section 7 at the same time, unless there were two people involved in the murder. Chen pulled DMV records for everyone involved. Jennifer's Tesla was new, but in 2015 she'd driven a blue Honda Civic. Richard Hansen had owned a black BMW. Derek's truck was red. Tom drove a white maintenance van, but the shoes in the reflection puddle were standing next to a green vehicle, and according to the angle and lighting, that vehicle was inside the caves. Heritage Cheese had used small electric carts to move cheese wheels through the caves. Most were yellow for visibility, but Chen found an old inventory showing they'd had one green cart used specifically for chemical applications. The cart had been reported destroyed in the 2012 flooding, but no disposal documentation existed. Tom finally cracked when shown the enhanced photo. Yes, someone had been with him that night, but it wasn't who they thought. Vincent Gallo sat in the interrogation room, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The cheesemaker who discovered Marcus Webb's body 9 years later had more to tell. "Tom called me that night," Vincent said quietly. September 14, 2015, around 3 a.m. Said there was a problem in Section 7, something about water damage that could affect the vintage collection. The vintage collection. Not cheese, but the Prohibition whiskey Tom had been secretly selling. "I met him in Section 4 first," Vincent continued. "We took the green cart, the one we used for fungicide applications. Tom had already removed it from the destroyed inventory after the flooding, kept it hidden for moving things he didn't want documented." Chen felt the pieces clicking together. Vincent had been the figure in the reflection, the owner of those shoes standing by the green cart. But Vincent was 61 now, had been 52 then. Not exactly the profile of a violent killer. "We got to Section 7 around 3:45, Vincent said. Marcus was already there. He was sitting at that old speakeasy table, drinking. Tom had given him a key to the maintenance entrance, told him to wait there. Marcus thought he was about to get evidence about Heritage's chemical violations. But that wasn't the plan." Vincent shook his head. Tom wanted to offer Marcus a deal. Cut him in on the whiskey sales, give him enough money to forget about his investigation. Derek had already taken his cut. Tom figured Marcus could be bought too. "Everyone has a price," Tom always said. But Marcus Webb hadn't been interested in money. Vincent described how the young security guard had recorded their conversation on his phone, threatened to expose not just the fungicide, but the theft of historical artifacts. The Prohibition whiskey belonged to the state of Wisconsin technically. Selling it was a federal crime. Marcus stood up to leave, Vincent recalled. Said he was calling the FBI as soon as he got to his car. Tom panicked, grabbed one of the bottles, the heavy ones from 1923. Marcus turned his back, and Tom... Vincent's voice cracked. The sound it made, like dropping a melon on concrete. Marcus had fallen forward, hitting his head again on the table edge. Double trauma, which explained the complex fracture pattern. He was dead within seconds, that strange smile frozen on his face, a neurological quirk of the specific brain injury. "We didn't know what to do," Vincent continued. "Tom said we had to make it disappear. We carried the body deeper into Section 7, to a spot where the supports were already damaged. Tom had engineering knowledge from his father, who'd helped build these caves. He knew exactly where to weaken the beams to cause a controlled collapse. They'd worked through the night. Tom continued his maintenance rounds, creating his photographic alibi, changing his shirt after getting blood on the first one. Vincent had spread fungicide in specific areas to contaminate any potential evidence. They'd moved Marcus's security badge to Section 4, making it seem like he'd gotten lost in the wrong part of the caves. The cave-in was supposed to be permanent, Vincent explained, but the flooding this spring shifted everything. When I saw the body had been exposed, I knew it was over. I called it in immediately, hoped maybe the evidence would be too degraded after 9 years. But why had Vincent helped? He had no stake in the whiskey sales, no connection to the fungicide cover-up. Tom knew about my son, Vincent whispered. My son Anthony had stolen from Heritage back in 2014, embezzled $40,000 for gambling debts. Tom caught him but didn't report it. Anthony paid it back, got treatment, he's clean now, has a family. But Tom held it over me. One word from him and Anthony would have gone to prison, lost everything. Chen arrested Vincent for accessory to murder and concealment of evidence. But Tom Kowalski was nowhere to be found. His house was empty, his van missing. An APB went out across Wisconsin and neighboring states. Derek Hoffman, cleared of murder but guilty of numerous other crimes, provided crucial information. The $50,000 hadn't just been for selling bottles. Tom had been building a fund to disappear if necessary. He'd mentioned having a cabin in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, off the grid, purchased under his deceased father's name. He was always planning for contingencies, Derek said. Tom thought 10 steps ahead. He probably had an escape route planned from day one. Jennifer Paulson's testimony revealed another layer. Her affair with Richard Hansen had started because Tom had introduced them. Tom had known about Richard's marital problems, Jennifer's ambition. He'd orchestrated their meeting at a heritage function, knowing Jennifer would be more likely to overlook violations if she was personally involved with management. Tom was like a spider, Jennifer said, sitting in the center of a web, pulling strings. He knew everyone's secrets, everyone's weaknesses. He never seemed dangerous because he was so helpful, so quiet. But looking back, he controlled everything. The search for Tom led investigators to his mother's house. She'd died in 2016, but the house remained in the family trust. In the basement, they found Tom's real office, maps of cave systems throughout the Midwest, detailed records of Prohibition-era sites, a library of books on historical artifacts and their values. He'd been running a massive underground operation, literally and figuratively, for over a decade. More disturbing were the journals. Tom had documented everything, including Marcus's murder. His entry from September 14, 2015 was clinical. Ems Webb refused offer, became aggressive, threatened federal involvement. Solution implemented. V. Gallo assisted under duress. Body secured in Section 7. Supports will be collapsed within 48 hours. D. Hoffman alibi established. J. Paulson distraction confirmed. Operation continues. The journals revealed 17 other Prohibition-era sites Tom had been exploiting across 3 states. The whiskey was just the beginning. He'd been selling historical artifacts, documents, even architectural elements from the old speakeasies. The total value exceeded $3 million, all funneled through shell companies and cryptocurrency. But Tom had made one mistake. In his rush to flee, he'd used a credit card at a gas station in Iron Mountain, Michigan. Security footage showed him filling multiple gas cans, stocking up on supplies. He was heading for his cabin, but winter was coming. He'd need provisions to survive off-grid. The cabin was 60 miles from the nearest town, accessible only by a dirt road that would be impassable once snow fell. Local law enforcement surrounded it at dawn, but Tom had anticipated this too. The cabin was empty, but warm. He'd been there and left within hours. On the kitchen table was a note. "You found Vincent's story compelling, I'm sure, but Vincent has dementia. Early stage, but documented. Check his medical records. His testimony won't hold up in court. The journals you found were fiction, written for a novel I was planning. My DNA isn't on the murder weapon because there was no murder. Marcus Webb disappeared. That's all anyone can prove." Chen checked. Vincent had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia 6 months ago. His family had been keeping it quiet, hoping medication would slow the progression. His testimony would be easily challenged by any competent defense attorney. But Tom had underestimated something. Technology had advanced significantly in 9 years. The whiskey bottle that had killed Marcus, found broken in the speakeasy, had been preserved as evidence. New techniques could extract DNA from porous surfaces that had been considered impossible in 2015. The bottle yielded 3 DNA profiles: Marcus Webb's blood, Tom Kowalski's skin cells from gripping the neck, and something unexpected: saliva on the rim. Someone had drunk from the bottle after the murder, likely in shock or disbelief. The DNA matched Tom, but with markers suggesting extreme stress hormones in the saliva. Tom had toasted his crime with the murder weapon. This evidence, combined with the digital trail Tom couldn't erase, crypto transactions, emails to buyers, GPS data from his phone that placed him in Section 7 at the time of death, built an ironclad case. Tom was arrested 2 weeks later at a storage facility in Minnesota. He'd been living in a unit he'd converted into a makeshift apartment, surrounded by historical artifacts worth millions. He didn't resist, didn't speak. But he was holding something when they arrested him. A photograph of the speakeasy from the 1920s, showing men in fedoras toasting with the same whiskey that had killed Marcus Webb. During the trial, the full scope of Tom's psychological profile emerged. He'd seen himself as a guardian of history, preserving and profiting from the past. Marcus Webb had threatened not just his freedom, but his mission. In Tom's mind, one life was worth less than preserving historical treasures for proper appreciation. "I gave Marcus a choice," Tom finally said during his allocution. "He could have been part of something magnificent. These artifacts, this history, it deserved better than rotting in forgotten caves. I offered him partnership, prosperity, purpose. He chose to be an obstacle instead." The prosecution presented their final evidence: Marcus Webb's phone, recovered from the speakeasy. The recording app had been running. Marcus's final words were captured. "This isn't about money, Tom. It's about what's right. These things belong to everyone, not just collectors who can afford them." Tom's response, clear on the recording: "Then everyone will lose them. I'm not going to prison for your principles." The sound of the bottle breaking. A gasp. Silence. Tom Kowalski was convicted of first-degree murder, concealment of evidence, theft of historical artifacts, and numerous other charges. He received life without parole. Vincent Gallo, despite his dementia diagnosis, was deemed competent at the time of the crime and received 10 years for accessory after the fact, though he'd likely serve it in a medical facility. Derek Hoffman pled guilty to corruption and conspiracy charges, receiving 5 years. Jennifer Paulson lost her environmental certification but avoided jail time, her violations deemed administrative rather than criminal. The Prohibition artifacts were donated to the Wisconsin Historical Society. The speakeasy was preserved as a historical site, with a plaque honoring Marcus Webb, the security guard who died trying to protect history for everyone. But the final revelation came from Marcus's mother, who'd remained silent throughout the investigation and trial. She brought Chen a letter Marcus had written but never sent, dated September 13, 2015. "Mom, I've discovered something amazing and terrible. There's history under our feet worth millions, and people are stealing it. But one man offered to show me everything, to trust me with the truth. His name is Tom Kowalski. He seems like a good man who got caught up in something bigger than himself. I'm meeting him tomorrow night. If something happens to me, know that I was trying to do the right thing. Some things are worth more than money. Some things belong to all of us. Love, Marcus. Marcus had walked into that cave believing Tom might be saved, that showing him trust might change his mind. That faith had cost him his life, but it had also ensured Tom's conviction. The recording existed because Marcus had gone there with hope, not suspicion. In the end, the man who'd smiled in death had been right. The truth had survived 9 years in the darkness, waiting for the light to find it. Tom Kowalski had thought he was the smartest person in any room or cave, but he'd underestimated the power of evidence preserved by the very environment he'd thought would hide his crime forever. The limestone caves of Wisconsin had kept their secret for 9 years. But stone has memory, and chemistry doesn't lie. Marcus Webb had been right about everything except one thing. Tom Kowalski had never been a good man caught up in something. He'd been the spider at the center of the web, and Marcus had been just another fly who'd flown too close to the truth. The Heritage Cheese Caves were sealed permanently after the trial. But sometimes maintenance workers in adjacent sections report hearing sounds. Not ghosts, they're quick to clarify. Just the settling of old stone, the drip of water, the echo of history that refuses to stay buried. Marcus Webb's badge, recovered from Section 4, now sits in a frame at Lakeside Security's office. Below it, a simple plaque. He saw what others missed. He stood when others knelt. He died doing right. Tom Kowalski's prison cell has no windows. He spends his days writing what he calls historical fiction, stories about Prohibition-era Wisconsin. He's never admitted guilt beyond what the court required. In his latest manuscript, a security guard discovers treasure in hidden caves, but chooses greed over justice. In Tom's version, the guard lives. But Marcus Webb's smile, that neurological accident that had haunted Vincent Gallo, had the last word. In every crime scene photo, in every piece of evidence, that inappropriate smile seemed to say what Marcus never could. I knew you'd be caught. Truth is patient. Justice is inevitable. The Wisconsin Underground had given up its dead, and with him, its secrets. The darkness that had hidden Tom Kowalski's crimes for 9 years had finally given way to light. And in that light, a security guard who died for his principles had finally found his justice.